We Beat the Street, Chapter 11. A sticky web of bright pink silly string across the astonished teacher's face. Ramik, 11th grade. Yo man, what's up with this? How come there's no Black history classes taught at this school? Ramik asked his history teacher as he flipped through the pages of their American history book. All I see in here is white folks. We teach the history of all Americans, Ramik, the teacher replied carefully. We try very hard to be culturally diverse in our approach. Where? Ramik asked bluntly. I see a picture of some slaves. And 300 pages later, I see Martin Luther King. Didn't anybody Black or Hispanic do anything important in all that time? The teacher changed the subject, saying it was time for class to begin, but Ramik seethed inside. He had recently helped organize a group at school called the United Students Organization with Ahi and Amiri Baraka, sons of the famous poet Amiri Baraka, and another student named Hassan. The USO met regularly, not to cause trouble, but to try to work within the school and the community to make changes. George and Samson went to meetings occasionally, but Ramik, always questioning, was one of the leaders. Our history books should reflect our history, Ahi said. And we need more money in this school, Hassan added with passion. Why do they always cut the budgets of schools in the city? Suburban kids have swimming pools and tennis courts and carpet in the halls. We get the leftover desks and old books and equipment. We deserve better. We ought to walk out, Ramik suggested at one meeting. And what would that do, George asked, except get us in trouble? But Ahi seized upon the idea. If just a few of us walk out, you're right, we would get in trouble. But suppose we all walk out, the entire school, he asked excitedly. Ramik grabbed his excitement. Suppose we get other schools in Newark to walk with us. They would have to pay attention to us. It would have to be well organized, Ahi said. We need flyers, coordinators, and troubleshooters. We can do this. The USO worked for weeks organizing the walkout. It was to be peaceful, yet powerful. Ramik, George, and Samson all participated in the planning. On a cool morning in April, at exactly the same time, hundreds of students from University High School quietly walked out of the building. They spilled onto the sidewalks and into the street. Some walked, some drove, some took buses to the Board of Education headquarters in downtown Newark. The buses and streets grew more crowded as, amazingly, students from Shabazz, Central, and other high schools joined the protest. They locked arms and chanted, "We shall overcome," they sang. Police showed up and tried to stop them, but there were too many students to arrest. Besides, the students were peaceful, well-behaved, and focused on their goal. Traffic was snarled as hundreds and hundreds of students marched toward the building. "We want to speak to the superintendent," Hassan and Ahi demanded of the timid-looking secretary who came out to greet them in the front of the building. "We have legitimate concerns, and we respectfully request a meeting to discuss them." The secretary scurried back inside with the message. Of course, the superintendent refused to come out of his office. Students grew impatient and began pushing. A surge of students moved forward, and they entered the lobby of the building. They sat down and refused to move until someone came to speak to them. Hassan, the loudest and most outspoken, was arrested for disturbing the peace. Eventually, the superintendent, an assemblyman, and a state senator showed up and spoke to the crowd, but the students' requests weren't addressed specifically or seriously. Hours passed. Gradually, students began to leave. They had jobs to get to or family responsibilities. "I gotta go, Ramik," George said. "I can't miss work tonight." "Do what you gotta do, man. I'm staying," Ramik said with a smile. "It just feels right, you know?" "I'm out of here too, man," Samson said. "Good luck." Ramik and about 50 others refused to leave the lobby of the building that night. The police set up guard, more to protect them than to detain them. Someone ordered them pizza. A parent brought blankets. But the students stayed the night, emphasizing the importance of their demands. The next morning, they went home, feeling victorious. Over the next few weeks, a committee was formed to develop the first curriculum at University High School that included African American and Hispanic history. Ramik was a hero at school and was even on the news briefly. He felt good about himself and what he had accomplished. But that didn't stop him from getting in trouble. He didn't like his biology teacher. Something about the woman made him want to push her buttons. He'd ask questions in class that he already knew the answers to and do everything she asked the class not to do. Ramik, you forgot that these lab reports must be turned in with writing only on the front of the paper. You wrote on both sides. I'm saving trees, Ramik responded, a devilish smile on his face. You'll have to do it over if you want to get credit for it, the teacher whined. That would waste even more trees, Ramik said innocently. Besides, every single answer on that paper is correct. Check them out. I refuse to grade a paper that has not been done according to the rules, the teacher insisted. Ramik shrugged, balled up the assignment, and tossed it into the trash can. Satisfied? He asked. George and Samson watched from their seats, laughing. The teacher tensed, but said nothing else. Ramik sat for the rest of the class, ignoring her, earphones on his head as he listened to music. The teacher did her best to ignore him. A couple of days later, Ramik had skipped a class and was roaming the halls with George and Samson. The trio spied a 7th grade boy walking toward them. The kid carried a can of silly string in his hand. Give me that, Ramik demanded. You want to get in trouble? He was much bigger than the kid, and the very presence in the hall of a group of juniors was enough to make the boy toss the can to Ramik and scurry away in the other direction. Ramik laughed and tossed the can from George to Samson, with no artificial purpose in mind. Suddenly, he said, Let's go see the biology teacher. They ran down the empty hall to the teacher's room, then knocked on her locked door. The door opened. The teacher stood there staring at the 3 friends. What do you want? She asked, seemingly angry that she had been interrupted. Without a word, Ramik raised his hand, pushed the button of the aerosol can, and sprayed a sticky web of bright pink silly string up, down, and across the astonished teacher's face. In confusion, the teacher turned to her class. They cracked up, falling out of their chairs with hysterical laughter. The teacher was humiliated and furious. Ramik, knowing he had gone too far, disappeared down the hall. Ramik Hunt, please report to the principal's office, the loudspeaker announced. Ramik slipped into the office and held his breath while the principal yelled at him for being stupid, insubordinate, and thoughtless, all of which Ramik knew was true. You're suspended from school as of this moment, Ramik. Indefinitely, he added. You mean I can't come back ever? Ramik asked in disbelief. He thought about all his mother and grandmother had sacrificed for him, about the loss of friends, about how he really did like learning things, and he slumped down the hall and out of the door. In the days that followed, the teacher developed an allergic reaction to the chemical in the silly string and threatened to file criminal charges. The superintendent upheld Ramik's expulsion, and a final hearing was held. Ramik, dressed in a suit and tie and armed with an apology, waited to see his future crumble. When asked to make a statement, Ramik stood and spoke. He looked directly at the teacher. I'm really sorry for what I did. I wasn't thinking about consequences. Sometimes I do that. My mouth or my hands go off before my brain gets involved. Actually, I really like biology. I love science, and it's easy for me. I don't know what else to say except that I'm really, really sorry. I hope that one day you can forgive me. The teacher, whose face was slightly swollen from the chemical reaction, said nothing and looked the other way. Ramik sat down, sure he was doomed to roam the streets of Newark, another dropout with nothing to do. Then the teacher asked to speak. Inwardly, Ramik groaned. She walked with dignity to the front of the room. She did not look at Ramik, but spoke directly to the superintendent of Newark schools, the same man that Ramik and his friends had made demands of just a few weeks before. Don't expel him, she said quietly. Ramik looked up in surprise. He's an over-enthusiastic teenager. Yes, he's thoughtless and foolish, but he's one of the brightest students I have. Let him come back to school. Ramik could not believe his ears. The superintendent, after a long and thoughtful deliberation, decided to listen to the teacher. Ramik was allowed to return to classes, a thankful, quieter, and more cooperative student, at least for a while. A conversation with Dr. Ramik Hunt. Foolishness and understanding. Silly string almost changed my life. That was a really foolish thing for me to do. I thought what I did was funny, and so did my friends. It kind of made me feel good, but while my friends were laughing, I was the one who got into big trouble. I never thought ahead to what might happen if I did something. I just acted on the first thought that came into my head. And that was usually a bad idea. It took a long time for me to learn that inappropriate activities always brought negative consequences. I certainly wasn't laughing when I was about to be kicked out of school. I was very lucky. When I was in that meeting with my biology teacher, I thought it was over. I was really sorry, but to be honest, I was most concerned about what would happen to me if I got kicked out of school. I wanted to take it back more than anything in the world. When she asked them to pardon me, I was very thankful. I also had a newfound respect for her. She wasn't as bad as I thought. Maybe she understood the thoughtless, impulsive behavior of kids more than I knew. Sometimes, however, sudden decisions can be good if the results are positive. Our decision to protest what we believe to be an unfair practice in our school resulted in social awareness for a group of energetic teenagers and cultural improvement for our school. If I had spent more energy in high school trying to improve the lives of others instead of making a nuisance of myself, I might have learned a lot earlier the importance of making a positive difference in the world.